Haiti and Dominican Republic, an island and people divided. Origins. Before the arrival of Columbus and the Spanish in 1492, the inhabitants of what would be known as Hispaniola were the Taino, who were part of the Arawak people. The Taino called Hispaniola Haiti, meaning land of mountains. The Taino were originally from the Amazon basin, but migrated to the coast of South America and then spread throughout the Caribbean, eventually arriving in Hispaniola. Before the Tainos arrived in the Caribbean, however, an archaic age people lived in the islands who were hunter gatherers and used stone tools. These original inhabitants were either culturally assimilated into the much larger Taino population or were wiped out by warfare, disease, and increased competition. With the arrival of the Spanish, the Taino population was devastated from disease, and the Spanish were easily able to conquer the different Taino chiefdoms. The Spanish would rule over the entire island until the early 17th century, when France began to establish a presence in the western parts of the island, with Spain ultimately ceding control of the western third of Hispaniola to France in 1697. Colonialism. The divide between what would be known as Haiti and Dominican Republic begins with the French colony of Saint-Domingue in the western part of Hispaniola. The main reason why they eventually went in completely separate directions is colonization styles between Spain and France. France used their part of the island for profit. They were never interested in truly settling it with their own people as the Spanish did in Latin America, but rather to make as much money as they possibly could, which they did as Saint Domingue was one of the most profitable colonies in the world. They heavily relied on the importation of Africans to work in their sugar, coffee, cacao, and indigo plantations. Whites made up less than 10% of the population of Saint Domingue, with the enslaved population being around 90%. Spain used their part of the island as a military stronghold due to its strategic location, assisting in further colonial expansion and a base to counter the threat of piracy. The Spanish also exploited the gold mines of the island. In the 18th century, a population boom occurred in the Spanish side, with many Spanish farmers moving in. The population dynamics on Spain's side was much more mixed, with more Europeans and persons of mixed background and much less populated than on the French side. The people on the Spanish side were more culturally Spanish, while on the French side it was deeply segregated due to slavery. Revolution. Tensions between the two sides reached a new low after the Haitian Revolution, which saw a Haitian invasion and subsequent occupation of the Spanish side in 1822 by Haitian President Jean-Pierre Boyer, with goals of unifying the island and to protect their country from reconquest and enslavement from the Spanish side, which was known as Spanish Haiti at the time. During the Haitian occupation, slavery was abolished on February 9, 1822. Agriculture was reduced primarily to a sustenance level, with exports from the Spanish side falling tremendously. This caused the emigration of Dominican landowners, which led to the redistribution of their property to Haitian officials. Haitian soldiers also commandeered supplies from the Dominican countryside, often violently and by gunpoint, as the government was unable to properly supply its soldiers. Culturally, the Haitians began to suppress Dominican culture, including the Spanish language and traditional customs. The Haitians also took steps to limit the Catholic Church influence and confiscated church property, deported foreign clergy, and severed most remaining ties to Rome. To the Catholics who made up the majority of the Dominican population, these practices were seen as a great insult and only deepened their hatred for the Haitians. In 1825, France demanded an indemnity payment of 150 million francs to be paid by Haiti for loss of property and revenue due to the revolution. This was ultimately a reparations payment for the freedom of the Haitian slaves and to recognize Haiti as an independent nation. These payments were unrealistic demands from France, but in order to protect their freedom, the Haitians obliged, but ended up having to take large loans out from French banks to pay it. In addition to the loans, the Haitians imposed heavy taxes on the Dominicans and forced Dominican farms to grow cash crops to help pay for these payments. Despite the resentment the Dominicans held towards the Haitians, there was no major revolts until 1839, and ultimately they were able to secure their independence from Haiti in 1844 when Boyer was overthrown in Haiti and his successor was forced to focus on consolidating his rule at home. On February 27, 1844, Dominican rebels drove out the last Haitian troops from the capital, securing their independence. The Dominican Republic is therefore one of the only countries in Latin America that celebrates its independence from a different country other than Spain. The Haitians tried several times to reconquer the entire island but failed, and finally recognized Dominican independence in 1867 following a decisive Dominican victory against the Spanish in the Dominican Restoration War. Trujillo. Ruling the Dominican Republic from 1930 until his assassination in 1961, Trujillo used anti Haitian ideology to rally Dominicans around his dictatorship by claiming a strict rule was needed to protect the nation from the threat of passive invasion by Haitian immigrants. In 1937, he ordered the massacre of an estimated 10 to 20,000 Haitians living near the border and what is now known as the Parsley Massacre, which saw Dominican soldiers shoot anyone who couldn't say the Spanish word parsley to their liking, as it meant they were allegedly Haitians and not Dominicans. Trujillo's attempts to carry out mass deportations prior to the massacre failed because local communities opposed the illegal targeting of Haitian immigrants. However, they couldn't remove the Haitian population from the country. They forced them to solely live and work on sugar plantations. Sugar was one of the nation's most important exports, and Haitians provided the backbone of the industry's labor force. At the beginning of each sugarcane harvest, the Army and National Police would search the country for Haitians and relocate them to plantations involuntarily, even if they possessed legal documentation. Often, children born in these plantations were not issued the proper documents and birth certificate, with this being used against them, as many were deported later in the 20th century for not having the right identification. The Trujillo regime believed that if Haitians could be contained in plantations, they could contribute to the wealth of the Dominican nation without ever being acknowledged as a part of it. While the majority of Dominicans are of majority African descent, the regime argued that after the decimation of the island's indigenous population, the Dominican Republic was repopulated by white Spaniards, and African characteristics in the Dominican population were only a result of Haitian infiltration, which only further divided both groups racially. Contemporary. By the mid 20th century, the economies of the two countries were comparable, but since that time, the Dominican economy has grown, while the Haitian economy has diminished to the poorest in the Western Hemisphere. This is primarily due to the economic downturn in Haiti that has been a result of factors such as a string of corrupt and brutal dictators, internal power struggles, rapid population growth, environmental degradation, and trade embargoes. All these problems in Haiti has led to a migration of Haitians to the Dominican side of the island who already have deep resentments towards the Haitians due to their occupation, different racial makeup, and the fact that the Dominican Republic isn't wealthy enough to support these new migrants coming in. This is only further increasing tension between the two groups, continuing to leave both sides of the island of Hispaniola divided and divisive. Thank you.